Hi, my name is Allison Ritter, and today I will be discussing the currently policy that is going through the Kansas House right now regarding private schools and their funding. So just a quick overview, this is a bill that's currently in the Kansas House. It's House Bill 2119. This bill has undergone many different revisions and corrections over the last couple of months. This is essentially a tax bill, and it will expand to all students, not only those who are in the lowest 100 elementary schools and qualify for free lunch, but also those who only qualify for free and reduced lunch. The goal of this bill is that more students would have access to a private education through scholarships and grant funding, and instead of only going to those 100 elementary schools or being qualified for free lunch, instead it'll expand to all students who qualify for the free or reduced lunch, which will open up many new opportunities for different students. There are a couple reasons why this could be a good idea for Kansas to pass. One of them being is that Kansas is known for some of their private schools and that they do provide a good education. Many parents have opted to send their children to these private schools because they believe that they will get a more individualized and one-on-one education. And the goal of this bill is to help students that are struggling in a public school setting to get a more one-on-one individualized approach, and being able to go to a different school where they will have more attention and more focus on them. Senator Sykes did comment on this and said that equal access to education creates stronger communities, attracts businesses, and develops a well-prepared workforce, all of which lead to a more prosperous state. With this, he is saying that not only having students that financially can go to private schools, but also those who unfortunately financially cannot, having both of them in the same school, getting the same education, will create a stronger community and have everybody have a more common understanding. And having people that grew up with different backgrounds but receiving the education can make the community grow stronger together. There are some negatives to this bill as well. One of the important things to note is that private schools do not have the same curriculum as private schools do not have the same curriculum or standards that public schools have. And with that, these private school teachers and educators do not always have to get Kansas licensure. With that being said, that means that they are not following the same curriculum as the public schools and are not always being taught the same thing the same way as the public schools are. Unfortunately, it is also known that some private schools tend to discriminate against different people with different backgrounds, especially with those who are getting government funding or scholarships. They can tend to see more discrimination that way. Another thing that is important to most Kansans is that this money will come through the tax dollars. Certain people do not support private institutions, private schools. They would prefer that their money would only go to public schools. So there can be some unhappiness there. Another thing is that some of this money will be taken away from the public schools to give to these fundings for students to go to these private institutions, which in turn will leave these public schools with less resources than they initially had. This bill does currently stand in the House. It went through the Senate last week. The bill did pass 23-14 to expand the program and is currently under review in the House. Through a political stance, many of the Republicans in the Senate and the House are for this bill. They believe that it would be a good change to have people of different financial backgrounds both in the same institutions. However, many Democrats believe that having to tax other Kansans to pay for these private institutions and for these scholarships when that is not what private institutions were created for will create some unsettlement against many of the citizens in Kansas. There are many reasons why this bill is important to social workers and why social workers should continue to stay educated on bills and policies such as these. Many social workers do work in the school setting or with students who are in the lower income risks or factors. Um, it is important as social workers to know where this bill stands. So if your client would be interested and is high risk and falls in these categories and would want to go to a private institution, that they would know the qualifications to have them go to that institution. It's also important to note that if there are social workers in that school, that they're noticing if there's any discrimination against those certain students who are there on scholarships or grants, and make sure that they are still feeling comfortable and that discrimination is not happening. It's also important because social workers are aware of the financial struggles and the educational struggles of many students, and knowing that if your client is high risk or not, and if this would be a good fit for them is important. In conclusion, I'm looking forward to seeing where this bill goes. I personally did go to a private school growing up, and there were many students in my class who were there on scholarships. And I believe that in many cases it can benefit and it will be a good thing. However, the financial way of how they're doing it needs to be approached differently, in my opinion, since I know many people do not support public or private institutions and would prefer their students would go to public. So there are a lot of pros and cons to this issue. Thank you.